One shoes here. Number 6, Buried Ireland series. Yeah, we've really juicing it up now. We had some startling revelations in the last episode with regard to gigantic forts potentially being buried under bogs for a lot of it, and grass and mud. Um, so the landscape of Ireland is definitely taking an interesting. Um, it's very different than what it looks like. Is what I'm thinking to myself. So to get it going today, we're gonna have a little reminder of the idea of the Star Fort. As we start episode 6, this is from starfort.org. They have some fantastic materials on there. Really good. But to remind ourselves of the different shapes. So when we're looking at a landscape, we are reviewing the shapes and the contours in relation to these shapes. So they don't always have to be a perfect star. It doesn't, it can be odd. Sometimes it's like a circuit board. I've seen that it being compared, like John Levi and UAP. There's a couple of people, like Martin might have done as well, Martin Liedtke. Like the circuit board idea. I extend that idea a little bit further and think circuit board and include water as the current in this canal system. So what they propose is that there's a system of canals. They propose that on starforce.org. I agree. I think that's spot on. I think that's exactly what it looks like when you break it down. I think that's what the logic makes sense. That's how these videos started, is the fact that the Boyne is a canal. So let's just bear that in mind. And today we are headed to Navan. We've made it to Navan finally. Navan. We finally made it there. And what a spot along the River Boyne, so along the Canal Boyne. So this canal ran along here, the Boyne Canal probably through here. But here we go with Ard Mulcan. And there's a graveyard and there's a church here. So we're going to drop down in here in a moment, but we're going to bring in a bit of mythology, because the lady who was related to this area, she was a goddess named Baccha, and she was known in two capacities. So she was part of Namarigna, so the triple goddess. Why didn't I just do that? So this is Macha, M-A-C-H-A, and she is one of the trinity of the triple goddesses. So she's included with Bab and Maeve. I'll get her up there in a minute. And the other one is Eru, Fola and Bamba. So there's two sets of these triple goddesses, but Baccha is in one of them. So we're probably assuming they're the same people, to be honest. Maybe they're different, but they're interrelated in stories and things like that. So from a comparative point of view, it's likely they were the same people. So she's in the same group as Eru. So we spoke about Eru in the last episode. We spoke in depth about her. She was the mother of Bress. She was the sister of Elaha, and she also had a son with Elaha, who seduced her. There's a lot of that going on in those old stories, and the same in Greece and Rome as well. And the brother-sister relationships, very common. So this is Macha, and she is associated with Navan, which is this area here. So this is Navan, and no doubt it's Navan Fort is the name of it. So there is a fort here somewhere. I think I have a little bit on the fort. We might find it anyway. But what we want to look at for the moment is our Vulcan, because that caught my attention. Before we do, we're going to have a quick look at Macha, and we're going to try to get a little bit of an idea of who she was and where she fits into it. So here we go. Macha, her mother is Ernmas again, so it's the same as the Tua Dedan and the Morrigan mother. Ernmas. Ernmas is the mother goddess mentioned in the Lower Gala Erin and Kaimai Third as one of the Tua Dedan. Her daughters include the trinity of eponymous Irish goddesses, Eru, Banba, and Fowla. The trinity war goddess, the Bab, Macha, and Anan, also, who was also called the Morrigan. And also a trinity of sons, who she had. So we're not worried about the sons. Macha, daughter of Ernmas of the Tuatha Dé Danann, appears in many early sources. She is often associated with her sisters Bab and Marigu, whose names was Anand. The three, with varying names, are often considered a triple goddess associated with war. A 13th century compilation of glosses of medieval manuscripts preserved in the Yellow Book of Lacan describes Macha as one of the three Marigna, plural of Morrigan, and says the term Meshrad Mache, the mast of Macha, refers to the heads of men that have been slaughtered. A version of the same gloss in MS blah 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 identifies Macha with Bab, calling the trio raven women who instigate battle. Keating inexplicably calls them the goddesses, but medieval Irish tradition was keen to remove all trace of pre-Christian religion. Macha is said to have been killed by Balor during the battle with the Fomorians. So that would have been the second battle of Moytura, where she would have fought against Balor. So it's an interesting one. So Macha, she seems to be different than, but like if she was killed, she is a different character than the Morrigan. Like, is there three? There probably is three sisters, I would say. I'd say it goes that far that there is three sisters. And together they probably were almost like the war goddesses, but maybe one or two of them were alright. Macha seems to have been fairly wild. So she does. And then we're talking about, so we spoke about St. Patrick in the last one, and they refer here to Christian times and pre-Christian. So like we think in our minds 1400s, kind of. Sometime in and around that I have my mind of where this fits in with history, and we've no reason to believe how much of history is true as we go back into like 1800, 1700, 16, 15. But it would make sense, and they always seem to tell the truth, but spin it in a way that we can't see the truth in it, if you know what I mean. So I'm wondering that like pre-14 or pre-1500, that you had this civilization here. These are the stories that all lead up to St. Patrick. And maybe that all the stories are the story of St. Patrick as well. This is another possibility to consider, that the wars are actually the wars of St. Patrick versus the Firbolg, and St. Patrick poses as the Fomorians, he poses as the Tuatha De Danann, he poses as, maybe all these different ones, but maybe the Firbolg or the original, say the Normans. We're going to see there in a minute that there's a close Norman connection with Navan here as well. So I have a feeling that the Firbolg were the Normans, who were the primary occupiers here for the majority of the time, for a long time. And everywhere was fairly peaceful. And in the more recent past, things got a bit out of hand all over the world, evidently. But in Ireland, it was the invaders posed themselves as different people, but were potentially they were all the same invader posing as different factions within the stories. They name different people in different names. But I have a feeling that the Firbolgs and the Fomorians are the same. And that maybe the Tuatha De Danann may actually be, in fact, I'm not really sure yet, so I won't elaborate too far, because I'm not really sure. But anyway, it gets a bit messy and complicated, and we won't go into it now. I'll be gathering my thought by accident in the middle of the show. Anyway, right, what else do we have to say about Macha before we jump into Navan? Macha, click. Nothing else. Nothing else to say about Macha. Why is that? There we go. So Macha is confused with several different. I wouldn't say confused, but there's an instance of Macha in other places. So she's mentioned as a daughter of Partholon. So Macha traditionally would be seen as a daughter of Delbath. So Partholon, is Partholon Delbath? Is a question we should be asking ourselves. And as a settler, an invader, like, are the settlers the invaders? So it's always equated with, the invaders. The Tuatha De Danann were the invaders, and the Fomorians were the invaders, as far as the Firbolgs were concerned. So the original, like when the original invasion happened, the Tuatha De and the Fomorians were already aligned because they had familial relations. They had marriages between them already beforehand. So Macha was a Tuatha De Danann / Fomorian. They were all the same blood. They were all intermarried. Tuatha De Danann and Fomorian were almost the same in bloodlines. So is that what the text is telling us of Partholon? They pretend Partholon comes along, and then they say that Partholon was a different age, and then they just pretend he died of plague 10 years later, all rubbish potentially. Macha, several figures are called Macha. They appear in Irish mythology and folklore, all believed to derive from the same goddess. So these doubles or multiples are associated with Ulster, particularly with the sites of Navan, which is actually Leinster, and Armagh, which is Ulster. So Ann Vacha, which are named after her, so Vacha, Macha. Mach is a son, actually, in Irish. Mach is son. I'm pretty sure Mach is son. My Irish is a bit rusty, but I am fluent. I need a bit of practice though. I should know Mach. Mavach. Yeah, Mach is definitely son. So, wife of Nemed. So she's positioned as the wife of Nemed then in another one. So the Nemedians, so various sources record that Macha is the wife of Nemed, leader of the second settlement of Ireland after the flood. She was the first of Nemed's people to die in Ireland 12 years later. She was the first of Nemeid's people to die in Ireland 12 years later after their arrival. Oh, interesting. She was the first to die 12 years later. She was buried in Ardvacha. So that's very different to the story of Macha the Tuatha Dé Danann, who died at the hand of Balor. So maybe her death, maybe it was it related? Could it be related back? Maybe. We'll see in time. So the surrounding woodland was cleared by Nemeid's folk named Mai Macha, Macha's plain, like Mai Tora, Tora's plain. She is described as the daughter of the Red Weapon Aid, as the raven of the raids and diffuser of all excellences. So that's Macha, wife of Nemeid, and a bit of a biography. So she's essentially meant to be a different person than the other Macha. Let's just remember. But this is just another instance where Macha appears in the mythology. And next is, we've got a little bit more on Macha. Sorry there now. Pictures aren't loading as fast as they should be. I'll keep it small because I can't every time I change it. The arrow disappears. So we've read that, read the Morrigan, and I think that we're good. So yeah, just before we go, a little bit about Partholon. So so Partholon was the leader of the second group of people to settle Ireland. So you might remember that the first group of people was the granddaughter of Noah, and they say it was after the flood. I wonder about that. Partholon was the leader of the second group to unite to settle Ireland, people of Partholon. They arrived on the uninhabited island 300 years after the flood, and they were believed responsible for introducing activities such as farming, cooking, brewing, and building. After some years, they all succumbed to plague in a week. Another weird ending, just sudden rubbish ending to a whole race of people. Doesn't add up. Like, for me, I'm thinking is Partholon, that's the Tuatha Dé Danann, and the Fomorian combination, the whirlwind, and they came. I just can't see these battles being before the flood. I can't see them being after the flood, sorry. I just can't see the times of gods have to be before the flood, because the times of gods was gone. If you're going to buy into the times of gods, it has to be before the flood. I mean, if you're talking about, let's say, Hercules and the demigods, I mean, is this the time? Is this the time we're talking about? This doesn't seem to be the time of demigods. This is the time of all-out magic. This is the time of all-out Asgardian, like Athena, chariots in the sky, Vishnu, shape-shifting. That's not the demigods. The time of demigods was a bit different. Maybe the Fianna is the time of the demigods. Apparently, it is the time of the demigods. Like Manaman MacLear is a demigod. I mean, if we bring it back to, let's say, for a moment, well, I know we're going a bit off track here, but if we bring it back a bit to, let's say, the Anunnaki, ancient Sumerian texts, as my good friend Cornelius Patrick O'Sullivan, the superb comedian, would say, it's ancient Sumerian texts. I was totally lost for a minute there. I was like, oh no, checking the time. But as Cornelius Patrick O'Sullivan would say, ancient Sumerian texts, because I was always talking about ancient Sumerian texts from being looking into it years ago. Like I've looked into all that side. I've looked into the Irish mythology as well, but I looked deep into the flood myths and Atlantis and Lemuria and all of that. Like I've looked into huge amounts of it and dismissed an awful lot of it and took an awful lot on board as well, obviously. Just formed my own opinion. But if you look at that, like they say that the Anunnaki came to here and they established mining operations, which essentially established a canal. Let's superimpose that story back onto our other story. They established this broad system of canals. Like here, you've got your Greco-Roman buildings as well. You've got your abbeys. You've got your cathedrals. You've got everything. Like it's a gigantic. You've got your arches, your l'Arc de Triomphe. You have your beautiful Reichstag buildings. You have your amazing giant Vatican Capitol buildings. Everything. And they essentially terraformed the land and built, but by the looks of it, took down a natural landscape, took that down and replaced it with limestone in many places, and all different types of stone, but like limestone and Roman concrete seems to be it. And then everything seems to have been fine, and then it got messy, and then there was a flood, and then it was still messy, but maybe not that long ago, you know? So like this is what I'm thinking, that was there really one battle? You had the Fir Bolg, who were, let's say, everybody was happy and settled in all of their lands. It was fine. And then you have an invading or a battle, like a disagreement. For whatever reason, there was a disagreement, which is what they say happened to the Empire of Ross. It was infighting broke out, and there was dissatisfaction was seeded, and basically all of the lands of the Empire of Ross, or the Empire of Roses, like War of the Roses. That would be an interesting one to tie in if we have dates. I don't have the date on top of mind. But that empire turned on itself. But before, they were all one and they were all happy and everything was fine. But it all fell apart. And it all fell apart everywhere in the world, in all their myths and legends. And there was a flood everywhere in the world in all their myths and legends. I don't know, was it all everywhere at the same time, or was it localized, or, but you've got to think that the time of demigods may have been. I'm still thinking the time of demigods is. I'm still thinking the time of demigods is pre-flood, is it? Like Hercules and like the Minotaur. Like they sound like Asgardian tales, and the Asgardian tales is still the time of the gods, because like the gods still had their hand in the affairs of men, even during the times of the demigods. Like Athena was guiding, was it Hercules? She was guiding him. No, not Hercules. Ulysses, aka, oh, what's his name? I can't remember his other name, but he's known as Ulysses, and another name. I think it starts with O. It's not O. Anyway, so like I'm really thinking that the flood, did anything happen after the flood? Like they make it out like all this stuff happened after the flood. I'm wondering, did anything happen after the flood except for like the 1600s? They cleaned up after the flood and came in and hoovered it up. I mean, it would be a nice tale to tell the sleeping humans that there was only a flood recently and or there was a flood a long time ago, and all this stuff has happened ever since. It makes you feel insignificant. It's like when I found out, when you find out about like history and gods, and it's so far away in history, you don't really care about it. The closer it gets to your own time, the realer it becomes. And I think that by pushing things back so far in time and pushing events that happened before the flood to events that happened after the flood, it makes your mind think very differently about what you're looking at. Um, I think, like, I mean, whatever that canal world did, whatever energies it was providing, whatever it made the computer game or the Matrix do, it was different than what it is now. And going back to the Anunnaki, the point before I forget is that, like, they came down and then they made humans from something, you know, from themselves, from the existing population that were here. Who knows what was there? Like a nature people, like Avatar style, maybe. Who knows? It's way too much speculation for this type of video at the moment. I'm meant to be talking about Navin. But like you've got humans here as well in this tale. So there's humans, like the houses. This is the thing that you probably don't realise, especially if you live in Ireland, that like nearly all of the infrastructure that's not new is from this old world. Like all the houses, all the Victorian houses, all the mud flooded basement houses, um, the like your little local cottage, the cottage out in the country with the big thick 3 foot walls, anything with a 3 foot wall, you know, you know it's old, and but it's everywhere. It's not that old, as in like when I say old, as in I mean not the last 50 years, but like a lot of Ireland's infrastructure is still um relatively the stuff that's been around for since forever, since like 90 stuff that's been there since 1920, still around now. Um, so all of that masonry is also part of the landscape as well. And the humans were in there, but what they were doing in there, we don't really know. But like the story of the Anunnaki is that one of the gods, Marduk, took control of the humans. So the gods ended up having a war between themselves. Possibly the war where they dumped a load of shite on each other's star forts and blew up each other's abbeys so that they couldn't rejuvenate their wounded, maybe. So they blew up the strategic posts, blew up all the castles as well, whatever they did on the rivers, strategic points on the canals. And then in one last attempt, so then the gods had lost, and Marduk took the humans and he led them to victory to the Sinai base. And then there were stories then of like demigods. So even back before, like the humans were around in this canal world. I think that's what I'm trying to say here. That it wasn't just gods, like there was gods and humans together, but like the world, it worked. Whatever it was, it worked. And it was highly advanced from an infrastructure perspective and just a general knowledge perspective. And that's what the tales say. That's, you know, they knew arts like we don't know them. They knew arts like that are magic. So anyway, with that, let's jump into magical Navan, and we're going to start at this place over here. So in Navan, this is the place of Macha, and there's a fort here. There's a fort there. It's a what is that now? That's it. So do you know what that is? That is a quarry that I think I've been looking at for ages. It doesn't even look like a quarry actually. This is a field. But look at the edges on the field. Like that's, I mean, am I just seeing that shape now because I've seen it so much? But that looks to me like that's very odd there now. Like that's a dunk straight in there. And as we know, like the landscape is actually, it's dotted this way. It actually is. So it just gives us, it's like I was asking, we need some point of reference, and actually there is kind of a mapping that can be done on them if you're looking for them specifically. But we're going to go over here and we're going to look, because I like looking at these. I'm boring looking at shapes in the ground sometimes. This is way more fun. So we're going to go into Ardmulken Church. So Ardmulken, what goes on in Ardmulken and why am I down here? I'll tell you why I'm down in Ardmulken. I'm down in Ardmulken because it relates into the Normans, and I have a suspicion that the Normans are the Firbolg. They parallel nicely. I think that if I looked into mainstream history about it, of which I also know a fair bit of the narrative and what the story was, what the story is that we're told, I am pretty sure I've come across that Firbolg and Normans have been compared already in the past. So that's why I just have a feeling that they were the original Delas. So in this little blurb about Ardmulken, excuse me, Ardmulken Mounds. So neither the manor of Ardmulken nor the church had any association with Philippus. The Barons of Screen. So I mean the Barons of Screen, so were they Firbolg? The Barons of Screen, we're talking 1100s here. So now we're going to give real history a chance, and we're going to say that, right, it could all be rubbish, but maybe they're actually giving us the story. But what was happening was in a canal world with technology beyond our wildest imaginations. So take that thought where this wasn't in ruins and these had some weird function that we can only imagine. We're going to get to the bottom of. So at some time before 1199, Ardmulken was granted Theobald Le Boitelier. We know this from a charter executed by Theobald Walker. Blah blah blah. So this was when the Boyne was vital to the establishment of the Norman colony in Meath. A substantial motte was built at the height above the river, and a church and several chapels built on pre-Norman foundations. The church tower may be as early as 13th or 14th century. Present ruins of the church seem to be 15th century. I'd like to know how you come up with that. Judging from the remaining stones from a fine mullioned east window. Interesting. So they're basing it on erosion to the 15th century. So what a spot. What a spot. This is the Normans, and they're talking about this being the Norman spot that they built. All of, what did they build? They built a motte above the river, above the canal, the Boyne, and a church and several chapels built on pre-Norman foundations. So what they're saying is there's older foundations beneath these. But what those older foundations are is actually the foundations. So let us have a quick look at these pictures. The old pictures are nice now. Not if you're looking at it on a tiny phone, but once again, look at these walls, just big, thick, 3 foot. Sure, how thick we make them? 3 foot. Okay, and here, look, this is all covered. You know, like you can guarantee if I look at this from the sky, I'm sure I'm nearly guaranteed to see the pattern, of course. And once again, just to remember, like these here, see these walls, like these are everywhere. These walls are everywhere. They go down into the bedrock. These are the walls of the forts. Old graves, these, as I said, these generally are big vats. They're big square containers, and they go deep into the ground usually. I've seen them go deep into the ground. You can see examples all over the world. There's some graveyards that actually have them up out of the ground, and I think in those cases they may even be considered as vaults. But they wouldn't have these railings. These railings are original as well, so all the graves had these railings on them. Like this, like this is like a Greco-Roman type of tech, you know, and it's all covered in mud. Ooh, look at that. It's a freaky one. Look at the ruins in the back. It's almost like a painting, isn't it? That is an epic photo. It's the ruins of the church. Look at this here. See how high they go potentially, you know. You may only be seeing the bottom. So that's the church. Pretty flippin' cool. Pretty cool. There's a stud, and like you can probably see, like we looked at that church there now, and we're gonna go down to the ground and have a quick look at the ground level just to see. I think we saw in that, like it's a fine sharp shape, isn't it? I think that, so here we see again, like this is essentially, like you can see this is raised above the land, sloping down. So this is just, so here we go. Sure, can you see it? Can you see it? Gigantic. On the edge of the gigantic canal system. So the main arteries that run along the Boyne, just take a second, Ord, Vulcan, and these, so this is going under the ground, so you take that down, like this is all, so I suppose this is a gigantic wall here, like if you remove this, this is a big wall going down and out and down, and that just rolls into the canal then. Oh, so were all of these estates that were being taken over, I wonder, when they were dishing out estates to people, I presume they dished them out as per fortage, by the looks of it. Check this out, like. It's just leaning down into the Boyne. Just gigantic, and like, and I know that when we go back to, like this is the, like the, I suppose the edge of the Boyne is this, essentially. So what we're looking at is the edge of the rivers form these banks. The banks of a river are the edges of the canal systems, which makes sense. And then those canals, so if they were trying to get around, you could only come this way. You could only get in certain directions. But that's fairly wild now, isn't it? I can just see, like this here. I don't know, are you seeing what I'm seeing? But I'm just seeing that this is raised up above here, and the shape that raises it up, it is in the shape of those angles that are associated with the stars. And like, So like all of this here, so this could have been very, very wide here and have channels going all through it. So this could have been like a gigantic canal. The broad Boyne Bridge. So like this is heading back up towards Slane. So you see here, this is an old wall part of the canal. So this is the Boeing Canal, which we discussed in the first episode. Like it's a giant canal system. The whole, like this is like all of this has been covered in mud now, but it was all paved, every bit. I'd say every bit. That's just, could that be? It could. It could. It's a mind-blowing concept to consider, but it could be. Just when you're seeing it at these angles and you see the slopes, it's just such a mind bender. It's just like, what? It really is. Where's that bridge? That's the bridge. Broad Boyne Bridge. Bridges is another thing I'd like to get into a bit more. There's some epic bridges out there. Really cool. Let me see this bridge. And I suppose the if you're thinking about it from a canal perspective, that the I should just click on it. The locks of the drops and the ups and the down, it makes sense now. It's a perfect security measure for getting around. You know, you're stuck and you're in the lock. You're not going out. You know, you're down. You need to get up to go to the next part, but you can't go there because the guys who control the water won't let you go. Interesting one, very interesting. So look at this lad here. So going across, so all of the canals. So like, let's say then, right? Okay. So this is interesting. As we start to consider bridges in this hypotheses. So if each one of these is a canal almost even, and you're going much lower as well, so there's a bit of height here. But you couldn't have big ships coming through here with these bridges. And you'd imagine that, let's say that this is all canal, and I suppose that one of the canals runs under one of these. You can guarantee that. And the Boyne Canal is running alongside this here. So you just imagine this is all mud, but it used to have no mud. No, it's just like, it's literally a ruined world. Like a concrete world that is just flooded with mud. And it's beautiful, but it's nothing like it used to be. This is Ardmullen here, which we're going to pop into there now. We're going to have a look at that because it is very cool as well. One of the Beerball. Look at this then. What are they doing here? What are they doing here then? Is this a quarry? I find that funny. Like, are they quarrying the limestone from the blocks? They're quarrying the blocks. They're quarrying the cladding. But that is pretty revelatory, and I'm just looking at the Boyne here and the patterns and just the way it slopes in. It's like the high part of the landscape is all fortress-esque, but the lower part is not. And for some reason over in Mayo, they had their fortresses up even higher. So down here, the fortresses were quite low by the looks of it. They're not up high. Anything that's covered, it's not like those gigantic ones. Maybe North and South, maybe we'll see differently. So Ardmullen, where is it? Back to Ardmullen, please. Broadbourne Bridge. There it is. So where is Ardmulken House then? Where's the house? Yeah, just get your head around that. Mm-hmm. Do I even have Ardmulken written down here now? I would want to. So I would. Can't believe I came all the way up here, out of there now. Wherever I was. Oh, I never had Ardmulken put down. Note to self, just do search. Okay. Note taken. Ardmulken. So where's the house? Is there another house here? There's a stud, Cardiff Lodge. I thought there was a big fancy house here. Oh well. Where's the big Rowley's Lock? Rowley's Lock. So this is the lock of the canal. So this is the canal system. Look, here's another lovely little bridge. And like, I have a bridge like this just down the road. Nothing going on in it. Nothing happening. Just covered. Look at this. This is just mud. Masonry. Not too blunt. Beautiful bridge. And then, like, I love flowers and nature and everything, but they totally use it to hide all of this, which is fine. Thankfully, I'm glad nature's back. I'd say it was a weird world, this canal world, you know, no nature at all. I'd say it wasn't, I'm delighted to have nature back. Bit of wildness. It was like this canal world was almost, it was just so organized by the looks of it. But all that organization didn't seem to work out in the end. This is the lock. So the way a canal works, for people who don't know how a canal works, I will briefly explain. I think this is how they work. A canal will work. You will bring your boat into the canal, and then in order to progress to the next level, you may need to have extra water added to your little area here. So this fills with water, brings you up, and then you're able to go on to the next part. That's the way the canal works. So it's an up and down kind of a thing. As I was saying, great for security. I-792 is it? Bridge in the middle of the water. There you go. What more do you need? Just pure destruction. So that's the last Rowley's Lock in Navan. So Navan is an interesting old spot. Is there an old abbey? There's an abbey or two around here as well, I think, isn't there? Ardmulken Mounds. What are the Ardmulken Mounds? Well, we are going looking for Ardmulken Mounds, I'll tell you that much. Trim Castle. So we're going to look at that in the next episode or two. Oh, see, Carberry. Oh yeah, we'll bring this in here. This is an interesting one. Just to break things up a small bit. We go boggly-eyed looking at the map. That in, actually. Sorry guys. So sorry. So this is actually just another section from starforts.org, and I hadn't shown that. I showed this in the end of the last episode, and I showed different types of star-ish formations. There's a couple of different ones. Take a look at that, or take a look at starfortress.org, which has loads of cool stuff. Definitely check it out. But this is another formation, so it is these shapes, these sharp shapes with circles. So it's kind of combining the circles and the sharps together. And he calls them satellite and auxiliary structures. These structures are associated with the star civilization, so the civilization that built the canals that we're talking about, but are not star hubs, hedgehogs, castles, five-pointed structures. They are connected to a system by a series of canals, which ranged in size from hundreds of meters across, like massive rivers, right down to tiny irrigation tracts, like through fields and ditches that you see running along the sides of the road. There are a large number of these structures, some still described by the mainstream as forts, with multiple of shapes and sizes, but all of them bear the distinctive aesthetic look and feel of the star civilization. As our knowledge of the star civilization grows, more will become apparent, and we will be able to work out their particular functions. Many more were still present throughout the world in the 40s and 50s than compared to today, although the overgrown remnants of many exist if you know what to look for. So you can check out starforce.org for more info on that. But once again, this is what we kind of end up seeing, and it's just wild, isn't it? So we're going to find, let's have a look at, are there any abbeys in Navan, is there? Any abbeys in Navan? Well, we're going to have a look around anyway. So look, what we found is that, because it's important to recap here, that this whole side here is a star, okay? So what we're looking at when we come out here on the Boeing takes an all new look now, doesn't it? So we'll turn off the labels. And we are able to see that all this area here is one side of a star, essentially, because the edge of the river seems to form a boundary. So the river is a main canal, and the main canal, I'm not sure how wide they are. Is it this wide, or does it go over further? You know, does it run through these areas here? Because this area here is higher than here, and it seems to be all over the place. So what we're going to do is we'll actually have a look down. I'd like to see what height that the other side is in comparison to this side. And is it a similar height or not? And it looks like it's the same thing on the other side. You've got how much of a slope have we got going down? Let's wait for this to buffer. Go time 54. We're going to have to end this one here, I'd say. So I'm not sure in terms of height. It seems to be fairly similar, that the banks of the river just slope in on either side. That's the way to look at it on the river. So yeah, so this canal was this length, this wide. I suppose that's the floodplain of the Boyne now, out to the floodplains. That was the length of it by the looks of it. And this canal was etched out. This is probably the Boyne Canal here running alongside it, or along here. So the Boyne Canal, so let's just not forget there's a real Boyne Canal that runs alongside this stretch of water here. So there is a canal. They admit there's a canal. It's an operating canal. We just went to the lock of it a minute ago. And I think it just serves as further proof of this canal system world. It was just a gigantic canal system of intricate stairs. So we're going to come back here, we're going to pick back up in Navan on the next video, and we're going to head over to Trim, and we're going to stay in this neck of the woods for a bit longer. Look at that there, just sloping down, and it's just a massive, I don't know what it's like. See this here as well, it terraces up, so imagine like canal, paving, 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 up here, all pave, pave, and then that scoots up here, and then that goes up there, there, and then that scoots up there. It's relatively flat, but it is all stepped up. Isn't this just amazing that we can use Google Maps to do this? It's fantastic. So I think that that's about it for me for now. I don't know, were we meant to talk about holy wells? Were we meant to talk about abbeys? I don't think. I think I got to one church, which is not an abbey. It's a church, so maybe I should say ruined churches and abbeys. But we did get some excellent work done on the star. So episode 6, part 1 has gotten started, but we've only just begun. We're rediscovering the Boyne Valley with new eyes. So hope you enjoyed and think good thoughts.